Hello, friends, and welcome to Figure Study, where it feels really good to say that again. This is actually the first video that I've recorded in the past 2 months, I think. I've finally been able to get myself into a position where I can start making these again, and it feels good, not gonna lie. Also, apparently Astrid just could not resist being a part of the inaugural relaunch, if you want to call it that. Anyway, today we're taking a look at Transformers War for Cybertron Siege, which from this point forward I'm just going to refer to as Siege, Deluxe Class Hound. It's okay, honey. It's not actually a dog. Now, I was going to start talking about how I've never really had that many Hound figures, but as I'm thinking about it, I've actually had quite a few because of the various movies, and also I had the Make Toys Gundog, which I no longer have Gundog, so my apologies if you all were expecting a comparison there. But the main reason that I wanted to get Siege Hound looked at today is because I'm going to be retiring... Hi, honey. Careful. This is what you come here for, right? I'm going to be retiring Dreadwind as my default deluxe class size comparison. I'm still going to be hanging on to Dreadwind because I actually really like him and his ridiculous color scheme, but I figure, it's time to start using a more contemporary deluxe for that size comparison. So, with that in mind, I'm going to be using Hound because I like Hound. He's got a roughly deluxe size vehicle mode, roughly deluxe size robot mode, and spoilers, I guess, I won't be hanging on to Sideswipe or Cog for much longer. I won't really get into it. Suffice to say, I don't think they're bad. It just, physical space is important, and I have to make some tough choices. But regardless, I'm going to be hanging on to Hound. Hound is going to be my new default deluxe size comparison, so let's get him looked at so we can move on with our lives. And this Jeep mode, I actually really like this Jeep mode. It's sort of like, it's like a bizarre hybrid of Cybertronian design and more, I guess, Earth-based design. Like, obviously, it is first and foremost based on an Earth Jeep. Like, the front is, if you're looking at it from this, it almost looks like a Hummer Jeep hybrid. It's more when you start to turn it that it starts to look a little bit different. But overall, it is primarily, Earth Jeep design, just beefed out quite a bit. And there's some very nice detail in here. I like how they actually broke it up a lot with just simple color variations, like the green and black here in the wheels. Some nice details in the front, which it's even like a little winch up there. And I like that they painted all the different lights, like up on the wheel wells here in the front and all along there. It's really, since this is the first time I'm looking at a Siege figure, this is the first time I'm going to be saying it, but I really like that they seem to have listened to a lot of the criticisms from previous lines and have really brought out, I don't necessarily want to say their A-game, but they've definitely put way more into the Siege line than any of the previous lines that I've been taking a look at over the past couple of years. Not to say that those were bad, just, there's obviously more paint going in here, more, like even the taillights are painted. There's just more detailing, lots of little details in there, and even painted these little, I guess, side bucket things. And the engineering on these things, which I'll talk about more when we get into robot mode, is really nice. They even have little seats and what could be a little dashboard in there, which is kind of funny because nothing can fit in there. But it's still cool. It's a cool detail. I mean, he's a Jeep, so I guess it makes sense. And yeah, I definitely dig this Jeep mode. It is beefy. It has this unnecessarily translucent windshield because it just looks in on more plastic. So, like, there's nothing... You can't even see through it, so I don't know why that was translucent, but it's fine. It's whatever. But yeah, it's just a nice beefy Jeep mode. The colors are nice, that dark green. I really like the dark green with the copper highlights. I don't know why that works so well for me, but it totally does. I like how the weapons store, and yes, I'm actually looking at the accessories in this case, mostly because they mostly store in the vehicle mode and can be considered vehicle mode details. Like, this bit could be a spare tire, this could be the exhaust, and this is obviously a machine gun. Or possibly the Sirius FM antenna of the future. I don't know. There, let's, there. Now it's a radio antenna. But anyway, as I've said multiple times, I do like this Jeep mode. It just looks good. It's got a nice shape, nice design, nice coloring. It is quite solid. And now that the camera has decided to focus, let's move on to size comparisons. And starting with the old default, here he is next to Dreadwind, and I mean, you know, he's a little bit smaller in the grand scheme of things, but that's because Dreadwind has the wingspan, but Hound is much more densely packed. Like, if you look at him more like this, then it's a bit more even because of how they're packed in there. Also, I will address the face sticking out of the bottom there in a minute. But yeah, overall, pretty decent size, average size for a deluxe carbot, I think, or at least a modern deluxe carbot. And bringing in my other new default size comparison, here he is with the Duck Tank. And as you can see, he is definitely smaller than the Duck Tank, but then the Duck Tank was designed to be a much larger figure, so that kind of makes sense. Alright, so with all that rambling out of the way, since I am quite rusty, sorry, as I mentioned, it's just been a while, gonna get to the transformation, but first, I'm gonna take off these accessories. That just popped off on its own, that's great, and just want to talk about the face real quick. Now, people who don't have this figure might be wondering about this, because I was wondering about it myself. Why not just turn the head around so that you don't see the face on the underside? And yeah, that makes perfect sense. The problem is this panel here, and I'll be able to show it more in robot mode, this will not sit flush with the hood if you turn the face around. It's just the way that the head is shaped. It can't work that way. Like, you can do it, it's just this bit's going to be sticking up and it's going to look really dumb. So, yeah. But as I said, I'll show that more off in robot mode, which we are going to take a look at right now. There we have Siege Hound in his robot mode, and he looks like Hound. He's got the Jeep chest, he's got the primarily green color scheme, he's got that super boxy head. Definitely Hound. Now, as I was saying, I'm going to explain the panel real quick. You can see that it doesn't go back very far in robot mode. When you move it forward, it comes down at that slight angle, and that's how it needs to be for vehicle mode. If you spin the head around and try to bring it down, it doesn't come down at quite the same angle. Like, it's a bit more pronounced. Like, it's kind of, it's hard to see it, but it's just enough of a difference that it doesn't quite work. So yeah, that's a little disappointing, but not really going to be keeping this guy in his Jeep mode with the bottom facing out, so not a huge problem. So yeah, like I said, typical Hound. It's got some very Hound-esque details, like the stars on the shoulders, which I don't think they're necessarily like original toy or cartoon accurate in that sense. I don't think. My memory's a little fuzzy, but the silver stars on the dark green just kind of, it says Hound to me, even if that was never on his character or toy. It just kind of, you know, Hound is super duper military because of his green Jeep aesthetic, so it kind of works. And there's not a whole lot of new detail revealed here, actually. Like, you get a little bit in the arms, and that kind of brings the copper highlighting in. You, of course, get the midsection, pelvis, thighs, and that's all unpainted, but the color is broken up enough that it doesn't bother me at all. And I think it works making the thighs and midsection that lighter gray color because it just kind of breaks things up a little bit more. The calves are pretty much the entire sides of the Jeep, which is cool how they kind of fold up and close things up a bit. It is a little unfortunate how these tires stick out so much. I feel like if there were if there were a budget for it and the parts count and all that, like it would have been nice if these wheels could maybe flip in to fill in the calf a little bit more, because then not only would it fill in that gap, which personally I don't care about the gap, but it would fill that in, and also you'd be able to bring his legs in closer if you had them tilted out slightly, because like if you bring them in straight you can bring his legs together more, but that's kind of awkward looking, and it's a little bit more natural to have them tilted out a bit, and that just kind of has this giant wheel cabs banging into each other. As far as new details revealed, it's just a little bit in here, because this was originally covered by that back piece on the Jeep. And he, of course, has the battle damage, and it doesn't really bother me with Hound here, because it's, for one thing, extremely minimal. It's pretty much just on his shins, and also the dark of the green makes it stand out a lot less, which I think is fine. If anything, it just kind of looks like he's been tromping through mud, which doesn't really bother me. Also, he's a Jeep, he's a utilitarian vehicle, so whatever. And there's like a little bit on the bumper there, which almost looks more like painted detail than battle damage. But again, considering the fact that... oh, and down there. But considering the fact that it's like a Jeep, it's a rugged vehicle, it might be driving through rough terrain, potentially mud, although I don't think Cybertron technically has mud. But it makes sense that those bits would be dirty. Doesn't really bother me. Now, as is always the case, I'm not like a huge slavish G1 guy, but I can appreciate the fact that from what I'm aware of and from what I can remember, that boxy head is very Hound. I think the little ear bits are a new addition, which I don't mind. And primarily it's just sort of like the same Hound head style with some minor changes, like just added texture here and there, which the texture in these figures is great too. It's sort of like with Titan's Return, how they just have texture everywhere, but in a good way. The face is not bad. I'm not sure how obviously Hound that face is. I feel like the helmet is more what makes it Hound, but it still looks good. I like that really light blue for the eyes. That pops really nicely. And I like the little chin plate that's kind of poking out. It almost looks like a beard, kind of like the one I have. I might be a little partial to that, I don't know. And the rest of the detailing is nice as well. And you've got some hollowness here and there, which I know everyone loves to complain about incessantly. But, you know, it's a $20 figure. They've got to make cuts somewhere, and I think everything that they did makes perfect sense. And the hollowness here is much less pronounced than with like earlier lines anyway. And he has his accessories, of course, which I normally don't look at, but felt compelled to here because Hound. And this little grenade launcher thing, I like that they painted so much on this. Like, they actually did the silver around the barrel and these little copper bits on the sides that really stand out. And it works okay as a pistol if you just put it in his hand, or I guess that's like a club or something. But personally, I always like the shoulder cannon look, so I just plug it up there. And then the machine gun thing, again, you know, typical rifle, or can hold it like a club if you want. And then this thing I also like. It's got that little pin there that you can stick that in there and make it look like, kind of like an ammo drum, which I really like. That is cool. I like that they did that. And again, simple accessory, but I like that they painted so much on it. Like, just these little bits of silver in the middle and on the barrel, and these bits of silver around the canister here really go a long way. It's amazing how much a painted accessory can give the feeling like they really cared versus an unpainted accessory. Not to say that they didn't care before, it's just kind of... It's nice. It's something I'm not particularly used to with Hasbro stuff, but it is nice. I enjoy it. And he does look good when he's all armed up. Because, I mean, it's Hound. Hound's gonna hound, right? And now we come to the robot mode comparisons, and he is a little bit shorter than Dreadwind, like maybe half a head. It looks like a head taller on the camera for some reason, but it's really not that pronounced. Thing is, while Hound is a bit shorter than Dreadwind, Dreadwind has a decent amount of plane on his back, while Hound pretty much just has wheels on his calves and like this very slim backpack. And 2, he doesn't have to work as either a leg or an arm. He's just Jeep and then robot. He doesn't have any other modes. So yeah, I think it definitely works in his favor. Not that I don't like the combiners and all that. I do love me some combiners, but it is kind of nice to get back to basics. And for one final comparison, here he is with Duck Tank. And as you can see, he is definitely taller in robot mode, but then not quite, not quite as long, not quite as wide. But third-party $100 plus figure that is designed to be bigger regardless versus a $20 deluxe stands to reason. Though I do think it's cool how the kind of harsher angles and stuff that are going on with Hound sort of work with the harsher angles and more pronounced corners on the Duck Tank as well. It kind of makes them look like they could be part of the same universe. And that is going to do it for Siege Hound. My apologies if I have missed anything important that I normally would cover. As I said, I've been I've been out of the game for a bit. There were a couple of months where I just was not able to make videos, and that is a shame. But I am back. I am making again, and it feels good. And if you like Siege Hound, well, you're going to be seeing a lot more of him in the future. But that's enough about what I think. What do you all think of Siege Hound? If any of you out there have gotten your hands on any of the Siege Deluxes from the first or second wave, or both, what, in your opinion, is the strongest of them? Whatever your thoughts, feel free to chime in down below. I always enjoy hearing from you all. And while you're at it, also feel free to like or subscribe. Any of those things would make me a happy Rob. And remember, art is more than meets the eye. I may be 2 months out of practice, but I still have all that ingrained in my brain.